Timothy Snyder. He's an expert on fascism and American politics. Two of his books, On Tyranny, 20 Lessons from the 20th Century, and On Freedom, are a call to arms and a guide to preserving democracy and freedom that you should have in your house and on your coffee table at all times. Timothy, this is inspired by you, obviously, because every time you and I talk, at the end, you've got ideas about what people can do. But often they've been things that are a little more benign, like making sure you get a library book and subscribing to your local newspapers. I think we need to kick it up a notch at this point.
Yeah, I think, but kicking it up a notch begins with a fundamental thing, which you've just stressed, which is recognizing that democracy is not a noun. Democracy is a verb. So democracy is not a thing that's out there that defends itself. Democracy is the things we do every day, from the smaller to the larger. And so be as courageous as you can means that most of us will only be doing small things. Some of us will do riskier things. But the crucial thing is to do something on the basis of the understanding that if you think democracy is outside of you, if you think that it's just a thing out there, it's definitely going to be defeated. But once you act, once you take a little step, so long as it's something you know something about, you do it with other people, you do it regularly, it makes you a little bit uncomfortable. If it meets those criteria, then you're helping democracy. So we all need to kick it up a step from wherever we are, but we also have to recognize that it's not on any one of us to solve the whole thing. Right. So each of us does a little bit, and together that changes the whole landscape.
I think that's important to understand. You yourself are not necessarily going to be the one, but you may be a catalyst. And you've said two things that I want to dig into very separately. One is we can do it together. One of the things we see is that we're in community with other people. When you see rallies or you see protests or you see people resisting arrest or whatever the case is, or fighting for people whom they don't know, or fighting for people in the case of Mahmoud Khalil with whom they don't agree. You start to realize there's collective action. And then the second part is about doing things, getting a little uncomfortable. Let's address them separately. Let's first talk about the fact that there is community and courage can be contagious.
Yeah, again, so democracy is not a noun, it's a verb, and it's a collective verb, right? So you're not the people. I'm not the people. The people only exist insofar as the people go out and recognize themselves in their actions. So this is, for example, why one of the reasons why protest is so important. If I see people protesting, especially in the absence of a good communication system, which thanks to the internet we now don't have, if I see people protesting, I recognize, aha, that's the people. I could be part of the people by doing something. Authoritarianism wins when we all feel like we're alone. Democracy has a chance when we feel like we're together, but we only feel together when we're doing things.
Let's talk a little bit about the second part, the getting uncomfortable. We could frame it as courage, but I actually want to be a little more raw here and say courage. It sounds very positive, right? It's very encouraging to be brave. I'm actually talking about doing things that might make you uncomfortable. Where can we stretch ourselves in terms of the discomfort to which we expose ourselves?
Yeah, that's a wonderful question because, look, when you look, I mean, Gene Sharp was an interesting guy. He was also an eccentric guy. When you look at the history of people who stand out, they're often a little bit eccentric, right? Like Václav Havel or Lech Wałęsa. People in our tradition, Martin Luther King, there's always something which is a little bit interesting about them, right? Like there's a reason why they seem to stand out. And when we recognize people who are doing things, they're often people who are doing things that are a little bit different from what everybody else is doing. And we have to latch onto that and say, aha, I see somebody who is maybe more courageous than me, but also maybe just he's latched onto something that I didn't latch onto. He's eccentric in a way that I'm not eccentric. And that's not bad. That's good. And the moment of discomfort is the moment when you do something you haven't done before, but also when you're with people you weren't with before. And also, I want to stress this, it has to do with dialogue and learning. So it's a little bit uncomfortable for Americans to realize that actually thus far, people beyond the United States have done more to stop Trump than we have, but it's true. And so maybe we can listen to them. It's definitely uncomfortable for white people to realize, aha, in the 20th century, it was African Americans who actually extended democracy in the US, not us, which maybe means we should listen to them sometimes, right? So recognizing that, that moment that you feel like you have to do something is also the moment when you should realize there are people in the room who maybe have experience who I haven't acknowledged before.
Let's talk a little bit about what some of the things we've seen people resigning, for instance, right? Or judges standing up to the administration. We don't generally know this teacher who resigned because they wanted her to take the sign out. We don't have contact with these judges who are standing up to the Trump administration, and they are facing, all of these people are facing immense pressure. That teacher is going to have to go to a different school district to get hired. Those judges are facing threat from the president. How do the rest of us show our support for people who are being courageous and getting uncomfortable?
That's such a great question, because that's part of being the people, right? The way that authoritarians, fascists, oligarchs, modern tech fascist oligarchs break us down is by making us feel alone. They get us doom scrolling, they get us siloed, they get us thinking that it's hopeless, that everything is against us, they get us to waste our time. They get us separate from one another. But when we see somebody doing something we admire, small, medium-sized, or large, we can support them. We can support them on the internet, of course. We can tell somebody in the real world about them using their name, which is maybe even more important. We can see the thing that they did and ask ourselves, oh, how would I imitate that in my own life, on my own scale, right? In my own context. And also there are very practical things that people have started to do, but we could do more of, like legal defense funds for folks who lose their jobs in the government and outside the government, so that if people get pressured or they get fired, they know that there'll be somebody there with a safety net. And that makes it harder for the government to pressure them, but it also makes it easier for folks to be that little step more courageous.
I'm back now with the Yale University history professor, Timothy Snyder. Tim, you know what got me thinking about this is, and you're the historian, so maybe you can provide context around this. In early 1930s Germany, some portion of the population thought this is going to go really badly, and some portion of the population thought it won't. There are checks and balances. It'll all work out. If you had known in 1933 Germany what 1943 Germany was going to be like, I suspect everybody in 1933 would have acted differently. Now, I'm not suggesting we're going to end up like Germany in World War II, but what if we were all convinced this could go really badly?
Mm-hmm. No, that's a good question, because there are lots of different ways that things can go really badly, and things can go really badly without looking exactly like Nazi Germany. But at the same time, the overall point you're raising is a very good one. The only advantage we have over people in Germany in 1933 is that we can learn from their past. Mm-hmm. That's it. We're not smarter. We're not better read. We're not more courageous. We're not better anything. The only advantage is that we can learn from that past or from other pasts. And so the specific mistakes that people made were to think that a leader, a Führer, to use the German word, can represent the whole people, and so you don't need institutions. A specific mistake that conservatives and businesses made was, we can eventually get this guy under our control, and this will turn out well for the economy. A specific mistake that people on the right, but not necessarily the Nazi right, made was, this whole democracy thing, it hasn't really turned out that well. And a mistake that Germans made in general was to think our feeling at this moment is more important than what's going to happen in the long run. And there are a lot of Americans who are making that mistake. Like they're making excuses for Trump, they're normalizing Trump, whereas not recognizing that the things that are happening, for example, the destruction of science, which also happened in Germany, that these things have long-term effects for everybody. Like when I look at Germany in 1932, I think, yeah, this was a country which still could have had the whole next century as its own. Yep. And this is true for America now. Like we could still have the 21st century, but we're doing the things that are going to prevent us, our children, our grandchildren from having that kind of century, from having the century we could have had.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth reading that history if one hasn't read it to understand that Germany was scientifically, artistically, culturally advanced in a way that America is today. We are giving up things that we already have. Tim, great to speak to you as always. Thank you for joining us. Timothy Snyder is a professor of history at Yale University.